That's right. And what the states are going to have to decide is whether or not they're going to impose restrictions. And if so, how severe are those restrictions going to be? But if you look at the reports, there are dozens of kids that die across the country left in hot cars.
To me, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, this really isn't a class by itself. It's becoming a case of patterns making the predator. Exactly the issue. But here's the problem for both prosecutors and defense attorneys. Jails and prisons are not filled with nuns and choir boys. They are filled with criminals. But that's why this case is so interesting, because New Jersey has a terrorist charge that they believe fit. So it's a balance of safety over sensitivity. And, you know, Brian and I usually are in court with he said, she said. This is he said, they said. That's an environment where Delta's going to really value safety over sensitivity. In other words, they don't tolerate discrimination, but they also don't tolerate disruption. And Michelle, I echo a lot of those sentiments. They're not Americans. They are illegal immigrants. That's different than legal immigrants, which we welcome. Hold on, Hamza. You are no doubt arguing they're Americans for purposes of the Constitution. And that's the counter argument. Richard says, oh, it's a slippery slope. Because remember that memories, unlike fine wine, do not improve with age. Listen to the standard. More probable than not that he was generally aware of some incidents of wrongdoing. That is so vague. Think of this law not as a complete deprivation, but as a timeout. The things that really breaks your heart about this story, doesn't it? You've got kids killing kids. Now, this is not unprecedented, by the way, to have children as young as 8 being charged with homicide. It's true, it's litigation, but oftentimes litigation leads to legislation. But the Duger clan certainly is not the Brady Bunch, and now we learn they're also not all in the family. What woman doesn't know where her husband is in the middle of the night? The question is this ignorance in the moment, or does it reflect a greater ignorance of his activities? We know now this man was a triple threat. He was radicalized, armed, and angry. Whether the anger stemmed from identity or ideology, this trio of risk factors was something that we would expect that she would have known about. And that's while he is feeling fatigued. I can imagine what this guy is like when he has a lot of energy. But under the facts and circumstances, as hard as it is to believe and as strange as it sounds, she won't be facing criminal prosecution. In a CSI world of forensic evidence, it's hard to go missing without a trace. Premeditation can be formed in a very small period of time. Companies have a level of corporate social responsibility. Emotions are high. It's a horrible crime. Everybody's angry. Now, it's true the ballistics support the fact that it ricocheted, but that doesn't necessarily absolve the defendant from liability from a murder charge. But when it comes to hate crime, that's a bit of a misnomer, because prosecutors don't need to prove hate. All they need to prove is that a victim was selected based, and listen to the way it's phrased, on his or her membership, actual or perceived, in a protected category. That can be race, nationality, religion, sexual orientation, what have you. Counter-protesters are not a protected group. Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Patrick. Welcome to the Daily Ledger. Also, the movement to prevent sexual assaults and rape on college campuses. Next on the Daily Ledger, nuclear inspectors strike out. That's true, but emotionally it's got a lot of appeal, this lawsuit.
We'll see what the
I'm going to join if she wins. Well, circumstantial evidence is just as good as direct evidence, and they have hit this jury with an avalanche of circumstantial evidence. We want to make sure that those strong statements are really followed by strong actions, because actions speak louder than words. Well, first of all, man's best friend is not his dog, it's his family. She committed the crime, she's been convicted for it. Do we kill her for it?
Mercedes Colwyn and Wendy Patrick next.
So it really boils down to, in a word, perception. Was this a coordinated attack or a coincidence? It doesn't look like the second attack was a spur-of-the-moment decision. You know, and that's the issue. Is it an ambush or an accident? This is the bad shot defense. I, too, have a mother whom I adore, and I can't believe we're talking about this kind of a case. He uses his hands to emphasize certain of the points that he wants to believe, as while nothing was criminal, they posted it in order to raise public awareness.
What strikes you?
Well, what strikes me about this race on both sides now is the fact that to voters, credibility counts. It's a great question, Susanna. It's state by state. For example, in California, we don't have a statute, but that is of this year because litigation leads to legislation. You know, people that sleep with their cell phones, although none of us are going to admit to that. It's always easier to prove civil liability once you have criminal liability.
Right. Well,
they're not just looking at where there's smoke, there's fire. They're trying to find out whether or not there's smoke. And you also remember we are in the season of Lent, which is a season of reflection, of sacrifice, heading up into Easter.
This instance of soft target attacks. I mean, there isn't a big city in our nation that isn't a soft target.
Shark came into existence as a result of his missteps during Perry's halftime performance. You cleared it, you claim it. Shoveling snow is hard work. Take it from me in San Diego.